Tell your boss, he sneered at Tay, that taking trash from the streets doesn't make it treasure. Shocking. Just this one crude, contempt-filled sentence exposes the full brutality of the underworld. The talented Dr. Aisha Jackson, who once suffered hunger and exhaustion in a freezing, unheated apartment in the Bronx, is insulted as trash from the streets, simply for daring to enter the luxurious world alongside Mafia boss Don Kang. From the fateful night she saved his life after he took 2 fatal bullets in Queens, to the deadly proposal, "Marry me or your brother dies along with the $2 million debt." A marriage that began with coercion, violence, and extreme poverty, can it truly turn into a burning, genuine love? This tragic story, full of tears, passion, and redemption, is about to begin right now. Before we dive into this chilling and mysterious story, please remember to subscribe to the channel Crimson Romance Stories and like this video. Every subscription, like, and share from you is a huge spiritual gift and an incredibly profound source of motivation for the channel's growth, so we can continue bringing wonderful videos every day to everyone. There would be no greater joy than receiving your love and support through the comments you leave right below this video. Comments sharing your emotions or telling us which province or city you're living and working in while listening to this story. Alright, let's continue together and immerse ourselves in this amazing, captivating story that's filled with deep emotions. My name is Daniel Minjae Kang, though most people in this city just call me Don Kang. At 65 years old, with fair skin that still turns heads, and a lifetime of building an empire in the shadows of New York, I have everything a man could want. Penthouse views over Manhattan, fleets of black SUVs gliding through the streets, loyal men who would die for me without a second thought. But inside, I am hollow, profoundly lonely. The kind of loneliness that gnaws at your bones in the quiet hours, when the city lights flicker below and no one shares the silence. Guilt from the lives I've shaped, or ended, twists like a knife, a relentless inner turmoil that no amount of power can quiet. I appear dominant, unbreakable on the outside, but my heart is fractured, torn between the ruthless world I've mastered and the emptiness that echoes louder each year. It was a crisp October night in 2025, deep in the heart of Flushing, Queens, where my Korean-American community thrives amid the neon signs and late-night barbecue joints. A deal had gone sour with a rival faction, those hot-headed punks from a newer crew pushing into my territory. Words turned to threats, threats to guns. Bullets flew in the narrow alley behind a karaoke bar, sharp cracks cutting through the humid air. I felt the first one rip into my shoulder, then another in my chest. Pain exploded, hot and blinding, but I fired back, dropping 2 of them before my legs buckled. My men, Tay and the others, dragged me into the SUV, blood soaking my tailored suit. "Hospital, boss, nearest one," Tay shouted, tires screeching as we raced toward the trauma center in Elmhurst. I was fading, vision blurring, the metallic taste of blood in my mouth. Guilt surged again. Had my choices led to this? Another night of violence in a life already stained. But I clung to consciousness, barking orders through gritted teeth. They burst into the ER, my men carrying me like a fallen king. The place was chaos, beeping monitors, hurried nurses, the sterile smell of antiseptic mixing with fear. Doctors swarmed, but it was her who took charge. Dr. Aisha Jackson. I caught her name later, but in that moment, all I saw was this young African-American woman, 28 maybe, with exhausted eyes that burned with focus. She was beautiful in a raw, unpolished way. Dark skin glistening under the harsh lights, hair pulled back in a hurried ponytail, scrubs clinging to a frame that looked too thin, like she hadn't eaten properly in days. "Gunshot wounds, chest and shoulder, get 'em to Trauma Bay 1, she commanded, her voice steady but laced with the weariness of someone who had seen too much. As they wheeled me in, our eyes locked. Hers were deep brown, filled with a mix of determination and something deeper. Hopelessness? Despair? I could sense it even through the haze of pain. She moved with precision, cutting away my shirt, barking orders for blood transfusions and imaging. Her hands, slender, trembling slightly from exhaustion, worked miracles, stabilizing me as I teetered on the edge. I don't know how long the surgery lasted, hours maybe. She pieced me back together, removing fragments, stitching arteries, her voice calm over the frenzy.
Half conscious on the table, I whispered, "Thank you," in Korean, "감사합니다," without thinking. Her head snapped up, surprise flickering in those tired eyes. Did she understand? Or was it just the foreign words that startled her? Against medical advice, my men pulled me out once I was stable enough. I couldn't stay, too many risks in a public hospital. But as we left, I glanced back. She stood there in the hallway, wiping sweat from her brow, looking drained to her core. Later, I learned about her life from discreet inquiries. Aisha Jackson, brilliant trauma surgeon, scraping by on a resident's salary in a crumbling apartment in the South Bronx. Extremely impoverished, living at the absolute edge, nights without heat in the biting New York cold, hunger gnawing because shifts ran too long for proper meals, exhaustion from sleepless call duties, humiliation from overdue bills piling up. Emaciated, undernourished, battered by relentless winds sweeping through cracked windows. Her world was one of quiet despair, powerless against the grind that crushed the poor in this city. That night haunted me. In my penthouse recovery, pain meds dulling the wounds but not the inner fracture, I couldn't shake her image. Why her? Why did saving my life, a man like me, steeped in shadows, stir something so violent in my chest? Suspicion first. I wondered if it was pity or gratitude. But no, it was more. An overwhelming surge, explosive and immediate. Love. Fierce, burning passion crashing through my guarded heart like a storm. I, who had closed off emotion for decades, felt it rupture inside me, guilt clashing with this sudden, emotionally charged affection. She was destitute, hopeless, yet she had saved me, protected me without knowing who I was. Days blurred into reflection. Quiet moments in my vast, empty home, marble floors echoing my footsteps, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the skyline, amplified the loneliness. But now, thoughts of her brought tenderness amid the turmoil. I had to know more, had to see her again. Then came the confrontation. My crew tracked down a gambler deep in debt to us. Turns out, her brother owed millions from underground games in Koreatown basements. Bold, street-level threats from rivals circled, sensing weakness after my shooting. But when I learned the connection, everything shifted. Fate, cruel and absurd, had intertwined our paths again. I would intervene, protect her from the brink. The gap between my wealth, private jets, endless resources, and her heartbreaking poverty fueled my inner torment. How could the world crush someone so fiercely compassionate? It tore at me, drawing tears I hadn't shed in years. Little did I know, this was only the beginning. The night she saved me would lead to the moment I claimed her world, and perhaps she would save mine in ways no surgery ever could. I sat in the back of the Maybach, city lights streaking across the tinted windows like tears that refused to fall. 3 weeks had passed since the night she saved me. 3 weeks of painkillers and sleepless nights, and her face burned behind my eyelids every time I closed them. Aisha Jackson. The name tasted like salvation and torment at once. I told myself I only wanted to repay the debt, my life for hers, but that was a lie I could no longer swallow. What I felt was savage, possessive, terrifying. A love so sudden and absolute it cracked the ice I had carried inside my chest for decades. I, Daniel Min J. Kang, the man who owned half the underground gambling in this city, was trembling. Tay drove us deep into the South Bronx, past boarded-up row houses and flickering street lamps that barely fought the October darkness. My men had located her brother, Marcus Jackson, a broken man drowning in $2 million of debt to my organization. $2 million that had started as a few desperate bets in my Koreatown basements and snowballed into ruin. Tonight, he would pay, one way or another. And tonight, cruel fate had decided to drag the woman I loved into the same net. We pulled up outside a crumbling 6-story walk-up on Boston Road. The wind cut like knives, whipping plastic bags across the sidewalk. Marcus stumbled out of the shadows when my men opened the doors, his coat too thin, his eyes wild with animal panic. He knew what was coming.
He dropped to his knees on the frozen concrete, breath fogging in frantic puffs. "Please, Don Kang, I just need a little more time." Time. The one thing I never gave. My heart should have been stone. Instead, it was splintering. Because the moment he said her name, everything changed. "My sister, Aisha. She's a doctor. She saved your life, didn't she? She told me about the Korean man she pulled through that night. She doesn't know it was you, but take me instead. Or take anything."
Just don't hurt her. Aisha. My Aisha. The woman whose hands had trembled from exhaustion while she held my heart, literally, in her palms. The woman who lived in this same decaying building, one flight above where we stood. The woman whose life was now tangled with mine because of blood I could never wash away. I stepped out of the car. The cold bit into my still healing shoulder, but the pain was nothing compared to the storm inside me. Guilt, rage, longing, terror, love, all colliding until I could barely breathe. "Bring her down," I heard myself say, voice low, lethal, shaking. Minutes later, the lobby door creaked open, and there she was. Aisha Jackson looked even smaller than I remembered, swallowed by an old hospital hoodie 2 sizes too big, dark skin dull from too many nights without proper food or rest. Her cheekbones were sharper, eyes sunken, lips cracked from the wind. She had lost weight she could not afford to lose. Unease and sleeplessness had carved hollows beneath those beautiful eyes, and still, she was the most breathtaking thing I had ever seen. When she saw me, recognition flickered, then fear, then confusion so deep her knees buckled. One of my men caught her elbow to steady her. She flinched at the touch like a wounded animal. "Dr. Jackson," I said, forcing calm into a voice that wanted to break. "We need to talk." Her gaze darted from my face to her brother on his knees, then to the guns barely concealed beneath my men's coats. The street was empty, but the threat hung thick in the air. She wrapped thin arms around herself, trying to stop the shivering. "Sir, I don't understand," she whispered, soft, restrained, respectful in the way only someone who has been crushed by the world learns to speak to power. "Marcus, what did you do?" Marcus was sobbing now, forehead pressed to the icy pavement. "I'm sorry, Aisha. I'm so sorry." I could not bear it. The sight of her standing there, emaciated, freezing, humiliated because of sins that were not hers, it tore something open inside me, a violent, bleeding wound. How many times had the system failed her? How many nights had she gone hungry so her brother could chase cards? How much cruelty had the world already heaped on this woman who had saved my worthless life? I stepped closer. She shrank back instinctively, breath hitching. Fear. Pure animal fear of me. It was a blade straight through my ribs. "I will erase every cent of his debt," I said quietly. $2 million, gone, tonight, on one condition. Her eyes, wide, glassy, disoriented, searched mine. The wind whipped her hoodie, revealing collarbones sharp enough to cut glass. She swayed, dizziness overtaking her from exhaustion and shock. "Anything," she breathed, voice cracking. "Please, just don't hurt him." The words I spoke next would damn me forever, and still I could not stop them. "Marry me, Aisha. Become my wife, and your brother lives. The debt disappears. You will never want for anything again." Silence, the kind that screams. Her face drained of what little color it had left. Shock, then horror, then a numb, dizzy collapse of understanding. She staggered, legs giving out. I caught her before she hit the ground, my arms wrapping around her fragile frame. She weighed nothing. Starvation and despair had hollowed her out, and I felt tears, actual tears, burn behind my eyes. For one heartbeat she was against my chest, trembling violently, breath coming in broken gasps. I felt her fear, her confusion, her pain, and beneath it all the faint, frantic thud of her heart. My own heart answered with a roar so fierce I nearly staggered. In that moment, holding her while the cold wind howled around us and her brother wept on the pavement, I knew I was lost. The love that had ignited the night she saved me now consumed me completely. I would burn the city down before I let anyone harm her again.
and I would spend the rest of my life trying to deserve the miracle of her, even if she hated me for it, even if I hated myself. I carried her to the Maybach as if she were made of glass, her body limp against my chest, breath shallow and ragged from the shock. The October wind howled down Boston Road, slicing through her thin hoodie, and I felt every tremor that passed through her emaciated frame. She weighed so little, too little, that the guilt inside me twisted harder, a violent, tearing thing. How had the world allowed this? How had I, with all my wealth and power, stood by while a woman who saved lives starved in the shadows of my own city? Tay opened the rear door, and I slid inside with her still in my arms, unwilling to let go. Marcus was shoved into the front passenger seat, wrists bound loosely, sobbing like a child. The partition rose with a soft hum, sealing us in privacy. I settled Aisha on the heated leather beside me, pulling a cashmere blanket from the side compartment to wrap around her. She stirred then, eyes fluttering open, dark pools filled with disorientation and rising dread. Where are you taking me?" Her voice was barely a whisper, soft and restrained, laced with the timid respect of someone who had learned long ago that raising one's tone to men like me only brought pain. "To my home," I answered, keeping my tone low, controlled, though inside a storm raged. "We will talk there. You're safe now." Safe. The word tasted like ash. I was offering safety on the blade of a threat, and the remorse gnawed deeper, a relentless ache that made my healing wounds feel trivial. She sat up slowly, clutching the blanket, gaze darting to the tinted windows as the Bronx blurred past. Luxury surrounded her. Soft leather, warm air scented faintly with sandalwood, the quiet hum of a $500,000 engine, yet she shrank into the corner as though it might burn her. Confusion flooded her features, then fear, sharp and visceral. Her thin fingers trembled against the blanket's edge. "Your home?" she repeated, voice cracking. "Sir, I don't understand. Marcus said, he said you'd erase the dead if I—" She couldn't finish. Shock stole the rest, leaving her swaying with dizziness, one hand pressing to her temple as if to steady a spinning world. I reached out instinctively, steadying her shoulder. She flinched but did not pull away entirely. The contact sent fire through me, her skin cold even through the fabric, fragile bones beneath. That fierce, burning love surged again, overwhelming, possessive, painful. I wanted to shield her from every cruelty fate had thrown at her. The nights without heat, the skipped meals, the sleepless shifts in blood-soaked trauma bays, the humiliation of food bank lines and overdue rent notices. I wanted to give her everything. And yet, I was the one forcing the choice. "Yes," I said quietly. "If you become my wife, the debt disappears tonight. Marcus walks free. You will never know hunger or cold again." Her breath hitched. Tears welled, spilling silently down hollow cheeks. Emotional numbness followed the shock, eyes glazing as the enormity pressed down. She stared at her lap, shoulders curling inward, powerless against the weight of it all. But why me? The question came out broken, barely audible. "I'm nobody. I live in a walk-up with no heat. I haven't eaten a full meal in days. You're—" She gestured weakly at the opulence around us. "You could have anyone." The words struck like blows. Remorse flooded me, hot and suffocating. I had built an empire on fear and calculation. Yet here I was, crushing the one pure thing I had ever touched. Inner conflict tore at me, guilt warring with the desperate need to protect her, to bind her to me before the world could hurt her more. "Because you saved my life," I said, voice rough with emotion I could not hide. "And because I stopped. I could not say I loved her, not yet, not like this." The car turned onto the FDR drive, Manhattan's glittering skyline rising ahead. She watched it approach with something like wonder mixed with terror, as though crossing an invisible border into a life she had never dared imagine. We reached my penthouse atop a tower on Billionaire's Row. The private elevator opened directly into the foyer, marble floors, contemporary Korean art on the walls, floor-to-ceiling windows framing Central Park far below. Mrs. Park, my housekeeper, waited with quiet concern, bowing slightly as we entered. Aisha stepped out of the elevator hesitantly, blankets still clutched around her, barefoot because her worn sneakers had been left in the rush. The contrast was heartbreaking, her destitute fragility against my vast, silent wealth. I led her to the living room, gesturing to a plush sofa. She perched on the edge, afraid to sink in fully. Mrs. Park brought tea and a plate of warm mandu, but Aisha only stared at it, hands shaking too much to lift the cup. Marcus was brought in then, escorted by Tay. He fell at her feet, begging forgiveness. She touched his head gently, tears falling faster, but said nothing. The room felt heavy with unfairness, the cruel misfortune that had chained a brilliant doctor to her brother's weakness. I dismissed everyone. When we were alone, I knelt before her, a man of 65, fair-skinned heir to a shadowed empire, kneeling to a starving 28-year-old woman who held my heart hostage.
"You do not have to decide tonight," I said, though the lie burned. Rivals were circling. I had already received threats that Marcus's debt would be collected in blood if not settled soon. But understand this, if you refuse, he dies. And you will continue as you are, cold, hungry, alone. Her face crumpled. A soft, restrained sob escaped. "You're asking me to sell myself." The accusation landed like a bullet. Violent inner turmoil exploded. Remorse, self-loathing, desperate love. I wanted to roar that it was not sale but salvation, yet the truth choked me. "I am asking you to let me protect you," I whispered instead. "Let me give you the life you deserve." She looked up then, eyes searching mine through tears. Curiosity flickered beneath the fear, cautious, fragile. "And if I say yes, what happens to me?" "You become my wife, legally, publicly. You will want for nothing, but I will not force intimacy. That must be earned." A long silence. The city sparkled beyond the windows, indifferent. Finally, so softly I almost missed it. I agree. To save him." The words ruptured something inside me. Relief, triumph, agony. I had won her consent, but at what cost? As she swayed again, dizziness overtaking her from exhaustion and emotional collapse, I caught her once more. Holding her close in the quiet warmth of my fortress, I vowed silently that I would spend every day proving this coercion could become something real, even if it destroyed me first. The ceremony took place 2 days later in the private library of my penthouse, with only Mrs. Park and Tay as witnesses. No guests, no flowers, no music, just a judge I had summoned and the weight of what I was doing pressing down like a physical force. October light filtered through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the leather-bound books and the antique Persian rug. I stood there in a charcoal suit, fair skin pale against the dark fabric, feeling every year of my 65 like a chain around my neck. Aisha entered on unsteady legs, escorted by Mrs. Park. She wore a simple white dress that my staff had delivered, elegant silk that skimmed her too thin frame without clinging. It was the first new clothing she had owned in years, Mrs. Park had whispered to me earlier, and the knowledge had nearly broken me. Her hair was pulled back softly, face bare of makeup, eyes red-rimmed from another sleepless night. She looked heartbreakingly young, fragile, destitute even in silk. When our gazes met, fear flashed across her features, followed by that numb disorientation that had become her shield. She swayed slightly, dizziness threatening again, and I stepped forward instinctively to steady her. The judge spoke the words quickly, efficiently. Marcus was not present. I had sent him away to a quiet apartment in New Jersey, with a warning that any contact without my permission would void everything. Aisha's voice trembled as she repeated the vows, soft and restrained, barely above a whisper. "I do." 2 words that bound her to me forever. When I slid the ring onto her finger, a platinum band with a single flawless diamond, she stared at it as though it were a shackle, her hand shaking so violently I had to hold it steady. I kissed her briefly,
a brush of lips that was more claim than affection, and felt her stiffen, breath catching in dread. It was done. Dr. Aisha Jackson was now Aisha Kang, my wife. Mrs. Park served a quiet meal afterward, bulgogi, rice, banchan arranged beautifully on fine china. But Aisha only picked at it, hunger warring with nausea from shock and exhaustion. I watched her across the table, the fierce love inside me roaring against the cage of remorse. How could I have brought her here like this, coerced her into a marriage born of desperation? Yet the alternative, leaving her to the cold, to hunger, to the slow death of poverty, had been unthinkable. After the judge and witnesses left, I led her upstairs to the residential floors. The master suite was vast, king bed with Egyptian cotton sheets, sitting area with views over the park, a fireplace already lit against the October chill. I had prepared an adjoining bedroom for her, equally luxurious, with its own bath and walk-in closet already filled with clothing in her size. When I opened the door, she stopped in the hallway, eyes wide with confusion and cautious curiosity. This is for me?" she asked timidly, voice small. "Yes," I said, "your private space. No one enters without your permission." She stepped inside slowly, fingers trailing over the silk duvet, the heated marble floor in the bathroom, the bottles of luxury skincare arranged on the vanity. Tears welled again, spilling silently. The contrast was too much. The leap from cracked linoleum and a mattress on the floor to this unimaginable comfort. She sank onto the edge of the bed, shoulders curling inward, emotional numbness descending like a fog. I lingered in the doorway, heart fracturing. I had expected to bring her to my bed tonight, to consummate the marriage that was now legal and binding. The desire was there, burning, overwhelming, but seeing her like this, so broken by the day's events, something shifted. Restraint, a painful, self-inflicted mercy. "Aisha," I said softly. She looked up, fear flickering anew. "I will not come to you tonight, or any night until you are ready. You have my word." Shock rippled across her face, followed by deep confusion. "But the marriage, you said?" "I said I want a true wife," I interrupted gently. "Not a prisoner in my bed. Intimacy must be earned, not taken. You will sleep here alone. I will take the sitting room off the master suite." She stared at me, searching for the trap, suspicion warring with cautious wonder. "Why?" she whispered. You bought me. You could." The words were a knife. Violent remorse surged, hot and tearing. I knelt before her again, taking her cold hands in mine. "Because you deserve better than force. Because the night you saved my life, you gave me something I had lost long ago, hope. I will not repay that with cruelty." Her breath hitched. Tears fell faster now, not just from fear, but from the dizzying rupture of expectation. All her life, power had meant taking. Now, confronted with restraint from the most powerful man she had ever met, she swayed with emotional overload, pain and relief colliding. I stood slowly, releasing her hands though every instinct screamed to hold her close. "Rest," I said. "Mrs. Park will bring anything you need. Tomorrow we begin." Slowly, I left her there, closing the door softly, and walked to the master suite alone. The fireplace crackled, but the vast bed felt colder than any Bronx night she had endured. I stood at the window, city lights glittering below, and let the inner turmoil rage unchecked. Guilt, love, longing, terror that I would destroy her with my need. The passionate attachment that had ignited the night she saved me now consumed me utterly. I would wait years if needed. I would earn her trust, her desire, her heart. Because Aisha Kang, my wife, my salvation, was worth every agonizing night of restraint. And in the quiet darkness, I finally allowed a single tear to fall for the monster I had become, and for the miracle she might yet redeem. The days that followed the wedding blurred into a strange, suspended rhythm, luxury wrapping around her like a blanket too heavy to breathe under, while my heart beat in a constant state of fracture. I watched her from a distance, careful not to crowd, careful not to let the burning love inside me spill over and frighten her more. Every morning I woke in the sitting room off the master suite, the fireplace cold, the vast bed untouched, and felt the violent tension coil tighter. Remorse for what I had forced, terror that she would never see me as anything but captor, and an overwhelming, fiercely passionate need to protect her from every cruelty the world had ever shown her. Aisha moved through the penthouse like a ghost, thin, silent, eyes wide with cautious wonder and lingering fear. She ate little, even though Mrs. Park prepared meals that could have fed a family for a week. Warm kalbi jim, fresh banchan, soups rich with ginseng and beef bone broth meant to restore strength to someone who had been starving for too long. I saw the humiliation in the way she accepted each plate, as though accepting charity from the man who had bought her. Her body still carried the evidence of poverty, sharp collarbones, wrists so delicate I feared they might snap, skin dull from malnutrition and sleepless nights. The October winds no longer reached her here on the 57th floor, yet she shivered anyway, pulling cardigans around herself as if expecting the cold to find her again. On the third morning, I found her in the kitchen at dawn, standing before the sub-zero refrigerator with the door open, staring at shelves stocked with fresh fruit, imported cheeses, bottles of sparkling water. She did not touch anything. When she sensed me behind her, she startled, closing the door quickly, hands trembling. "I'm sorry, sir," she whispered, voice soft and restrained. "I didn't mean to. I was just looking." "Sir." The word cut deeper than any blade. I wanted to hear my name on her lips, Daniel, but I had not earned it. "You never have to apologize for eating," I said quietly. "This is your home now. Everything in it is yours." Her eyes filled with tears. She tried to blink away. Confusion, then dizziness. She swayed slightly, one hand gripping the marble counter. I moved closer, ready to catch her, but stopped myself. She needed space, not more overwhelming presence. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted, voice breaking. "I've never had this much food in front of me. I keep waiting for someone to take it away." The confession tore at me. Violent inner turmoil surged, guilt that I had dragged her from one kind of prison into another, even if this one had heated floors and 24-hour security. I wanted to pull her into my arms, to promise the world would never take anything from her again, but I only nodded. "Mrs. Park will help you, and I have arranged lessons." Her head lifted, cautious curiosity flickering through the fear. "Lessons?" "Korean language, twice a day with a private tutor. And self-defense training with Tae, starting tomorrow. You will learn to understand the conversations around you, and you will learn to protect yourself." Shock rippled across her face, followed by deep disorientation. "Protect myself? From what?" "From me," I thought, the remorse nearly choking me. "From the world I live in. From the rivals who already whisper that my new wife is a weakness." "From anything," I said instead. "Knowledge is power. Strength is safety." She searched my face, trying to find the trap, suspicion warring with the first faint spark of something else, hope, perhaps. Then emotional numbness descended again, and she nodded timidly. The lessons began the next day. The Korean tutor, Professor Kim, was a gentle woman in her 60s who had taught diplomats children. She sat with Aisha in the sunlit library, patient as Aisha stumbled over basic greetings. "Annyeonghaseyo, 감사합니다, 감사합니다." I listened from the hallway sometimes, unseen, heart aching at the concentration on Aisha's face, the way her brow furrowed when a syllable refused to form. She was brilliant. I had read her medical records, seen the awards from her residency, yet here she was, starting from nothing because I had thrust her into my world. Self-defense training took place in the private gym on the lower level. Mirrored walls, padded mats, equipment that cost more than most people's homes. Tae, my most trusted lieutenant, was a former Special Forces operative, broad-shouldered and expressionless. He treated her with professional respect, no condescension, no softness. The first session was brutal in its honesty. Aisha, still weak from malnutrition, could barely complete the warm-up. When Tae demonstrated a simple wrist escape, she tried, failed, and collapsed to her knees, breath coming in gasps, dizziness overtaking her again. I watched from the observation window above, fists clenched so tight my nails drew blood. The sight of her struggling, emaciated body pushing beyond limits because I had ordered it, it was unbearable. Yet I did not stop it. She needed this. If rivals came for her, and they would, sensing blood in the water, she had to be able to fight. That evening, a bold street-level confrontation erupted. My phone buzzed while I was in my study. Tae reported that 2 men from Victor Han's crew, my most aggressive rival, had been spotted outside the building, asking questions about the new Mrs. Kang. They had followed Mrs. Park home from the market, cornered her in an alley near Koreatown, demanding information. Mrs. Park, loyal to the death, said nothing. But the message was clear. They were testing my defenses. I left immediately, taking only Tae and 2 others. We found them in a dimly lit side street off 32nd Street, leaning against a black sedan, smirking as though they owned the night. When they saw me step out of the SUV, the smirks faltered. Don Kang, the older one said, trying for bravado. We were just... I did not let him finish. In 3 strides I was in his face, hand at his throat, pressing just enough to remind him who ruled these streets. No weapons drawn, only presence, only the promise of what could happen. You approached my housekeeper, I said, voice low, lethal calm. You asked about my wife. Consider this your only warning. Next time, there will be no conversation. They backed away, hands raised, fear replacing arrogance. We left them shaking in the cold. Back home, I found Aisha in the library, staring out at the park lights, wrapped in one of my cashmere sweaters that swallowed her frame. She turned when I entered, eyes wide with unease. I heard raised voices downstairs, she said softly.
Is everything all right, sir? The concern in her voice, for me, sent a jolt through my chest. For a moment, the remorse quieted, replaced by that surging, fiercely passionate love. I wanted to tell her everything, the danger circling, the lengths I would go to keep her safe, the way my heart had become hers the night she saved my life. Instead, I only nodded. A minor business matter, resolved. She studied me, cautious curiosity growing. You left in a hurry. You looked angry. Not angry, terrified. The thought of anyone touching her, threatening her, ignited a violence inside me I had not felt in years. I protect what is mine, I said, the words rougher than intended. She flinched slightly, fear flickering again, reminding me how carefully I had to tread. Quiet moments of tenderness began to weave through the days. One night, after a particularly exhausting lesson where she had finally managed a full Korean sentence, "Jairumun Aisha imnida," Mrs. Park brought her a bowl of patbingsu as reward. Aisha's eyes lit with childlike wonder at the shaved ice topped with sweet red beans and fruit. She ate slowly, savoring each bite as though it might vanish. I watched from the doorway, unseen, and felt tears threaten. How many simple joys had poverty stolen from her? Later, when Mrs. Park had gone to bed, Aisha found me in the study. She stood in the doorway, hesitant. "Thank you," she said timidly. "For the lessons, for everything. I know you didn't have to be kind." Kind. The word was absurd. I had coerced her into marriage. Yet hearing gratitude in her voice, seeing the faint color returning to her cheeks from regular meals, it eased the gnawing remorse, if only slightly. "You deserve far more than kindness," I replied, voice thick. She looked at me then, really looked, for the first time without immediate fear. Curiosity, caution, and something softer flickered in her eyes. The emotional peak hit me like a wave. Violent inner struggle between wanting to pull her close and knowing I must wait. The love burned hotter, anchoring every decision. As October deepened, her strength grew. She could now hold a basic conversation in Korean. She could break a simple hold Tae demonstrated. Color returned to her face. The sharp edges of hunger softened. Yet the contrast remained heartbreaking. The woman who had lived on the edge of survival now moved through halls of marble and gold, still expecting it all to be taken away. And every night I lay alone, listening for her footsteps in the hall, praying that one day she would come to me willingly. Because Aisha Kang was no longer just the woman I had rescued. She was becoming the center of my world, and I would burn everything to the ground before I let harm touch her again. 3 weeks into our strange new life, I decided it was time.
The whispers in my world had grown too loud. Rumors that Don Kang had taken a young, unknown wife, that he was softening, that his judgment was clouded. Victor Han and the other rivals were circling closer, testing boundaries with small incursions, a shipment delayed, a protection payment short, anonymous messages hinting they knew about Aisha. I could not keep her hidden forever. To protect her, I had to show strength. To show strength, I had to present her publicly as my wife, untouchable, respected, mine. The event was the annual Korean American Business Leaders Gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, a glittering affair masked as charity but really a gathering of power. Politicians, CEOs, old money, new money, and those like me who operated in the shadows between. Black tie, champagne that cost hundreds per bottle, silent auctions for art worth millions. I stood before the mirror in my dressing room, adjusting the cufflinks on my tuxedo. Fair skin stark against the black fabric, and felt the familiar turmoil rage. Remorse that I was dragging her into this den of predators. Terror that someone might see her vulnerability and exploit it. And that fiercely burning love that made every risk feel necessary. Aisha appeared in the doorway, and the world narrowed to her alone. Mrs. Park had worked miracles. The gown was emerald silk, cut perfectly to her slowly recovering figure. Still slender, but no longer emaciated. The color brought warmth to her dark skin, and for the first time, subtle makeup highlighted her eyes, her cheekbones. Her hair was swept up elegantly, exposing the delicate line of her neck. She looked like royalty. Yet when our gazes met, fear flashed, raw, instinctive, followed by dizziness that made her grip the doorframe. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered, voice soft, restrained, timid. All those people, they'll stare. They'll know I don't belong. The words pierced me. She still carried the weight of poverty like invisible chains, the humiliation of worn-out clothes, the dread of judgment from those who had never known hunger. I crossed the room slowly, careful not to crowd her. You belong wherever I am, I said quietly, and tonight you will stand beside me as my wife. No one will dare question it. Her eyes searched mine, cautious curiosity warring with unease. But they will. I'm not like them. I'm not like you. No, she was better, purer, the woman who had saved lives while starving herself. The injustice of her past life, the cold winds that had bitten through thin walls, the nights she had worked double shifts only to come home to an empty refrigerator, rose in my throat like bile. I wanted to shield her from every cruel glance tonight. I offered my arm. After a heartbeat's hesitation, she took it, her hand trembling against my sleeve. The contact sent fire through me, that passionate attachment flaring hotter. I would burn the room down if anyone hurt her. The gala was everything I expected. Crystal chandeliers, string quartet, air thick with expensive perfume and ambition. Heads turned as we entered the great hall. Whispers rippled outward like waves. The age difference, her youth, her race, the suddenness of the marriage. I felt Aisha tense beside me, breath shallow, dizziness threatening again as eyes dissected her. We moved through the crowd, my hand steady at the small of her back. Introductions were polite on the surface, businessmen bowing slightly, their wives offering tight smiles. But I caught the judgments. Too young, too different, trophy or weakness? Aisha kept her chin high, though I felt her fingers digging into my arm for anchor. Then Victor Han approached. He was younger than me, 52, slick hair, shark smile, and had been pushing boundaries for months. Flanked by 2 lieutenants, he stopped directly in our path, champagne flute in hand. "Don Kang," he said in Korean, loud enough for nearby ears. "Congratulations on the marriage. Your new wife is unexpected." His gaze slid over Aisha, lingering too long, appraising. She stiffened, fear flickering before caution took over. The room quieted subtly, sensing confrontation. "Unexpected?" I replied, voice ice. "Clarify." Victor switched to English, smile sharpening. "So young, so different. One wonders what a girl from the Bronx sees in a man of your experience." The insult landed exactly as intended. Her poverty, our races, the age gap, all weaponized. Gasps rippled. Aisha's face drained of color, shock hitting like a physical blow. She swayed, emotional numbness descending as old humiliations resurfaced. The stares in hospital cafeterias when she wore the same scrubs 3 days running. The landlords who spoke down to her. The world that had always reminded her she did not belong. I stepped forward, ready to end him with words, or worse, when Aisha's hand tightened on my arm, not in fear, but in restraint. Then, miracle of miracles, she spoke, in Korean, clear, practiced, flawless after weeks of relentless study. "I see a man who commands respect without needing to belittle others to feel powerful," she said, voice soft but steady, every syllable precise. "Perhaps you should try it sometime, Mr. Han." The room froze. Victor's face flushed crimson, smile crumbling. Laughter, shocked, genuine, rippled from several onlookers. Even I stood stunned. My wife, who weeks ago had not known a single Korean word, had just dismantled my most dangerous rival in his own language. Pride exploded in my chest, fierce and protective, mingling with the burning love until I could barely breathe. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the tremor in her hands, the dizziness she fought to hide, the courage it had taken to speak when every instinct from her impoverished life screamed to stay silent and small. I laughed then, deep and genuine, cutting the tension like a blade. "My wife," I said in English, voice carrying, "is clearly more than capable of handling herself. Remember that, Victor." We moved away, leaving him humiliated. In a quieter alcove near the Temple of Dendur exhibit, I guided her to a bench. She sank onto it, legs giving out, breath coming in shallow bursts. I don't know where that came from," she whispered, voice trembling now that the adrenaline faded. "I was so scared, but he looked at me like I was nothing, like I used to feel every day." Tears spilled then, silent and heartbreaking. The emotional rupture was total, shock, relief, lingering fear, pride all colliding. I knelt before her, uncaring of the gala around us, and took her hands. "You were magnificent," I said, voice rough with emotion. "Fierce, brave. You humbled a man who has feared no one for decades." She looked at me through tears, confusion, and curiosity deepening. "You're not angry I spoke out of turn?" "Angry?" I nearly laughed again. "I have never been more proud in my life." Something shifted in her eyes then, a crack in the wall of fear, cautious wonder, the beginning of seeing me not just as captor, but as partner. Later, as we left the gala, another confrontation erupted outside. Victor's men, 4 of them, waited near the valet, blocking our path to the SUV. Drunk on humiliation, the boldest stepped forward. "Tell your boss," he sneered at Tay, "that taking trash from the streets doesn't make it treasure." The insult aimed at Aisha. Rage blinded me. I moved faster than thought, slamming the speaker against the stone wall, forearm at his throat. "Speak of my wife again," I growled, "and you won't speak at all." My men closed in. The rivals backed down quickly. No weapons, no escalation, just the raw reminder of who owned these streets. They scattered into the night. Aisha watched from the steps, pale, trembling. When I returned to her, she reached out, hesitantly, and touched my sleeve. "You protected me," she said softly, voice full of wonder and lingering shock. "Again." "Always," I wanted to say, until my last breath. In the car ride home, she leaned her head against the window, exhaustion claiming her. I draped my tuxedo jacket over her shoulders. She did not pull away. That night, in the quiet of the penthouse, she found me on the terrace overlooking the city. "I was terrified," she admitted, voice small. "But when I spoke, it felt like taking something back. From him. From everything that ever made me feel small." I turned to her, heart fracturing and healing at once. "You were never small, Aisha. The world tried to make you feel that way. Tonight, you showed them the truth." She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the faint jasmine from her hair. Curiosity won over fear. "Thank you," she whispered, "for teaching me the words to fight with." The emotional peak hit me violently, love so intense it was pain, remorse that I had forced this life on her, pride that she was rising within it. I reached out slowly, giving her time to retreat, and brushed a tear from her cheek. "You are changing everything," I said, voice raw. "Everything I thought I knew." For the first time, she did not flinch from my touch, and in that quiet moment under the October stars, with the city sprawling indifferent below us, I felt the first fragile thread of real connection form between captor and captive, between the man who had bought her and the woman who was, slowly, beginning to claim his heart in return. The gala had changed something between us, fragile, unspoken, but undeniable. Aisha no longer flinched when I entered a room. Her eyes sought mine more often, cautious curiosity replacing some of the fear. She spoke to me in careful Korean now, practicing sentences she had labored over with Professor Kim, her voice soft and respectful, always ending with a timid, "Is that right, Daniel?" The first time she used my name instead of sir, I stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, heart slamming against my ribs like a caged animal. That fiercely passionate love, already a fire, became an inferno. Yet the remorse grew heavier with every small victory. I had forced this life on her. Every luxury she accepted, new clothes that fit properly, meals she could eat without rationing, a bed with sheets that did not smell of mildew, reminded me of the cold Bronx nights I had stolen her from. And the danger was escalating. Victor Hahn had not forgiven the public humiliation. Messages came daily. A slashed tire on one of my driver's cars. A firebomb that missed a warehouse by minutes. Whispers that my weakness for my new wife would be exploited. I doubled security. Tay shadowed her every movement outside the penthouse. But inside these walls, in the quiet hours, tension of another kind built. It began with late evenings in my study. I worked long into the night, reviewing ledgers, fielding calls from lieutenants about rival movements. Aisha, unable to sleep, old habits from years of night shifts and worry, would wander down in one of my borrowed sweaters, sleeves rolled multiple times, hem falling to her thighs. She would curl in the oversized leather armchair by the fireplace, a book of Korean poetry or art history on her lap, pretending to read while stealing glances at me. One October evening, rain lashing the windows, she brought 2 glasses of soju and set one beside my elbow without asking. "I thought you might need this," she said softly, voice restrained but warmer than before. I looked up, exhausted from a day of putting out fires Victor had started. Her presence was a balm and a torment. She had gained weight, healthy, beautiful weight, and the hollows beneath her eyes had softened. Yet I still saw the shadows of poverty in the careful way she held herself, as though expecting the rug to be pulled away. "Thank you," I said, taking the glass. Our fingers brushed. Electricity shot through me. She did not pull away immediately. We drank in silence at first. Then she asked about a painting on the wall, a minimalist ink piece by Lee Ufen, stark black strokes on white. "It feels lonely," she said, tilting her head, "but strong, like it's holding space for something missing." The description struck too close. I set my glass down. "That is how I felt for many years," I admitted, voice rough. "Before you." Her breath caught. Shock flickered, then deep confusion. She shifted in the chair, dizziness threatening as emotions swirled too fast. "Before me?" she whispered. "You had everything, power, money, people who feared you." I had nothing that mattered. The words escaped before I could cage them. Remorse and longing collided violently inside me. My first wife died young, my son, cut me out of his life because of what I am. I built an empire, but I slept alone in a bed too large, in rooms too quiet. Until the night you saved me." She stared, eyes wide, emotional numbness descending as the weight of my confession pressed down. From crushing poverty to this, being told she had filled an emptiness in a man who owned half the city, it was too much. Tears welled. "You don't know me," she said, voice trembling. "Not really. I was nobody, starving, freezing. I still wake up expecting the heat to be shut off." I stood slowly, crossing to kneel before her chair as I had so many times.
"I know you worked 36-hour shifts and gave your meal vouchers to homeless patients. I know you studied by flashlight when the power was cut. I know you are brilliant, compassionate, stronger than anyone I have ever met. And I know that every day I thank whatever cruel fate brought you to that ER, because it gave me you." Her tears fell freely now. The emotional rupture was complete, shock at being seen, truly seen, after a lifetime of invisibility. Pain from old wounds reopening, dizzying wonder at affection from someone so powerful. I reached up, thumb brushing a tear from her cheek. This time she leaned into the touch, just slightly. The tension had been building for weeks, stolen glances, accidental brushes, conversations that stretched later into the night. Discussions of art turned to jazz, her love for Coltrane, then to dreams she had buried under survival. She wanted to finish her surgical residency one day. I promised quietly that she would. Another night, after a particularly bold confrontation on the street, this time Victor's men blocking a delivery truck in Midtown, forcing a standoff until I arrived personally and stared them down. Aisha waited for me in the foyer, face pale. "You could have been hurt," she said, voice small but laced with genuine fear. For me. The realization undid me. I cupped her face gently. "I will always come home to you." She searched my eyes, curiosity overtaking caution. "Why does it feel like you care more than you should?" "Because I do," I said, voice breaking. "Because I have loved you since the moment your hands held my heart. Because every day I fight not to scare you with how much." Shock hit her like a wave. Disorientation followed, dizziness making her sway. I steadied her, pulling her close without thinking. She did not resist. Our faces were inches apart, breath mingled, the air crackled. Then I kissed her. It was not gentle. Weeks, no, months of restraint shattered. The kiss was hungry, desperate, claiming. My hands tangled in her hair, her body pressed against mine, and for a heartbeat, she responded, lips parting, a soft sound escaping that nearly brought me to my knees. But then reality crashed back. She pulled away suddenly, eyes wide with terror and confusion. "I can't," she gasped. You forced this. You bought me. I can't want this. I can't want you." The words were a blade straight through my heart. Violent inner turmoil exploded. Remorse so fierce I staggered back. Love so overwhelming it was physical pain. "I know," I rasped. "I know what I did, and I will spend my life making it right." She fled then, running up the stairs, leaving me alone in the foyer with the echo of her footsteps and the taste of her still on my lips. I did not follow. I stood there until dawn, staring at the city lights, guilt and longing tearing me apart. I had promised not to force intimacy, yet the kiss had been force of a different kind, my need breaking free. The next day she avoided me, meals taken in her room, lessons continued, but her voice was distant. I gave her space, though it killed me. Then came another confrontation, more dangerous. Victor's men ambushed one of my collectors in Flushing, a message clearly meant to escalate. I went personally, leaving Aisha with extra guards. When I returned, blood on my knuckles from a warning that had required physical emphasis, she was waiting again, this time with bandages and antiseptic. "You're hurt," she said softly, timid but determined. Minor cuts, nothing compared to the wound inside. But she led me to the kitchen island, cleaning the scrapes with gentle hands that trembled. Her touch undid me.
Aisha, don't, she whispered. I'm still scared. Of this, of you, of how I responded last night. The honesty broke me. I caught her hands. Then I will wait. A year, 10 years, until you are no longer scared. Tears filled her eyes again. How can you say that? You have all the power. Because you have all of mine, I said simply. She stared, emotional numbness cracking into something raw and hopeful. The tension remained, charged, unresolved, but the kiss had shifted the ground beneath us. In the quiet nights that followed, she returned to the study. We talked longer, sat closer. She asked about my past, my losses. I told her truths I had never spoken aloud. She shared fragments of her childhood, the father who left, the mother lost to illness, the brother who dragged her into ruin. One evening, as rain fell again, she reached across the space between our chairs and touched my hand voluntarily. I'm still confused, she admitted, voice soft, but I'm less scared. It was enough, for now. The rising tension between us, passion held in check, love growing despite the chains I had forged, became the air I breathed. And though Victor's threats loomed larger, though remorse still gnawed, I knew one truth with absolute certainty. Aisha Kang was my redemption, and I would wait forever for her to claim me as willingly as I had claimed her. The days after the kiss were a delicate torture. We moved around each other like magnets, drawn irresistibly close, yet repelling at the last moment out of fear. Aisha no longer fled the room when I entered, but her eyes held a storm, desire warring with doubt, warmth with lingering suspicion. She would sit nearer during our evening talks, knees almost touching, then pull back suddenly as though burned. I gave her space, though it cost me. Every night I lay alone, replaying the taste of her lips, the soft sound she had made, the way her body had molded to mine for one heartbreaking second. The passionate love inside me had become a living flame, beautiful, destructive, impossible to contain. Remorse gnawed deeper. I had promised restraint, yet I had taken that kiss. And the danger outside our walls grew. Victor Hahn's provocations escalated. A key supplier threatened. A loyal captain followed home. I handled each with cold efficiency, but the strain showed. I came home later, darker, and Aisha noticed. One late October night, after I returned from yet another street-level standoff, this time in a dimly lit parking garage in Midtown where Victor's men had cornered two of my collectors, I found her waiting in the foyer, face pale, hands clasped tightly. "You're bleeding," she said softly, voice trembling with restrained fear. A shallow cut on my forearm from shattered glass, nothing serious. But she led me to the kitchen anyway, cleaning and bandaging it with the steady hands of a trauma surgeon. Her touch was gentle, almost tender, and I felt the tension coil unbearably. "I hate this," she whispered suddenly. "Seeing you hurt, knowing it's because of everything. Because of me, because of the world I had pulled her into." I caught her wrist gently. "None of this touches you, I swear it." Her eyes filled with tears. "But it does. Every time you leave, I'm terrified you won't come back." The confession undid me. For the first time, she admitted caring. The emotional peak was violent, love and remorse colliding until I could barely breathe. I released her quickly. "I will always come back to you." She nodded, but dizziness overtook her. She swayed, one hand pressing to her stomach. I steadied her, concern sharpening. "Are you ill?" "No, just tired," she murmured, but her face was ashen. I let it go. For then, the revelation came 3 nights later. I had been in my study, reviewing security reports. Tay had intercepted chatter that Victor was planning something bigger, when Aisha appeared in the doorway. She wore one of my silk robes over pajamas, hair loose, face drained of color. She clutched a small white stick in trembling fingers. "Daniel," she said, voice so soft I barely heard. I need to tell you something." The world narrowed to her. I stood slowly, heart pounding. She held out the pregnancy test. 2 pink lines. "I'm pregnant." The words hit like thunder. Shock ripped through me, violent, disorienting. Joy first, explosive and overwhelming. A child, my child. The heir I had once demanded in my arrogance. Then reality crashed. The timing. She had been with me only weeks. The math. "It's not yours," she whispered, tears spilling. "I found out a few days ago. It happened before. A brief relationship, someone from the hospital. It ended badly. I didn't know until the nausea started, until I missed." Her voice broke. Emotional rupture consumed her. Shock at the pregnancy itself, terror at telling me, dread of my reaction. She swayed, dizziness and nausea combining, and sank into the nearest chair, head in hands. I stood frozen. The passionate love that had defined every breath since the night she saved me now warred with a jealousy so primitive it frightened even me. Not mine. Biologically, not mine. The child growing inside her, fruit of some fleeting connection in her old life, the life of hunger and exhaustion and loneliness. Guilt followed the jealousy like acid. I had coerced her into marriage, demanding an heir. Now fate mocked me with cruel irony. She carried a child, but not the one I had imagined. I knelt before her, forcing calm into a voice that wanted to shatter. "How far along?" "8 weeks," she said, voice small, timid. "I'm sorry. I know this changes everything. The bargain, the reason you—" She could not finish. Tears fell faster. From crushing poverty to this, pregnant, trapped in a forced marriage, facing a man who had once demanded a son of his own blood. The injustice of it all, the absurd cruelty of fate, tore at her. She curled inward, protecting her still flat stomach instinctively. I reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she did not, I cupped her face. "Aisha," I said, voice rough with emotion. "Look at me." She did, eyes swimming in fear and confusion. "This child is mine." Shock rippled across her face. "But the test, paternity." "I will claim this child as my own, in every way that matters, legally, publicly, in my heart." Her breath hitched, disorientation deepened, dizziness making her grip my wrists for balance. "Why?" she whispered. "You wanted an heir, your bloodline." "I wanted you," I said fiercely. "From the moment you saved my life. The heir was an excuse, a desperate reason to bind you to me when I had nothing else to offer but power and protection. This child, our child, will never know anything but love from me." Tears streamed down her face now, emotional numbness cracking into raw wonder and pain. "You'd do that? Raise another man's—" "Our child," I repeated. "And if you allow it, I will love you both with everything I am." The confession hung between us. The burning love I had carried in silence poured out, passionate, overwhelming, absolute. She swayed again, overwhelmed. I caught her, pulling her gently into my arms. This time, she clung to me, face buried against my chest, sobs shaking her fragile frame. "I'm scared," she admitted against my shirt. "Of the baby, of telling you, of feeling things I shouldn't." I held her tighter. "Then be scared with me. We will face it together." Quiet tenderness followed the storm. I carried her to her bedroom, laying her down as though she were spun glass. Mrs. Park was summoned discreetly. A private doctor arrived within the hour. Blood work confirmed everything. 8 weeks, healthy so far. When we were alone again, Aisha lay propped on pillows, exhaustion claiming her but eyes still fixed on me with cautious wonder. "You really mean it?" she asked softly. "About the baby?" "I've never meant anything more." She reached for my hand. I took it, pressing a kiss to her palm. The revelation changed everything and nothing. Danger still loomed. Victor's threats grew bolder, but now there was more to protect. A fragile new life. And in the quiet hours that followed, as she slept beside me for the first time, I could not leave her side. I felt the inner turmoil shift. Remorse remained, for the coercion, for the kiss that had frightened her, but purpose burned brighter. I would be the father this child deserved, the husband Aisha could one day choose freely. Outside, October rain fell against the windows. Inside, I held the woman I loved and the future we had not planned. And for the first time in decades, the loneliness eased, even as the shadows gathered thicker around us. The revelation of the pregnancy had wrapped us in a fragile cocoon of hope and unspoken promises. For the first time since I had forced her into this life, Aisha sought my company willingly. She would rest her hand on her still flat stomach during our evening talks, and when I placed my palm over hers, hesitantly, always giving her time to pull away, she let it stay. We spoke of names, of futures, of the child who would never know the cold winds that had once bitten her through cracked windows. I arranged the best private obstetrician in the city, vitamins imported from Seoul, every comfort my wealth could buy. Yet the remorse inside me deepened daily. I had demanded an heir once, as part of the cruel bargain. Now fate had given her a child not of my blood, and I claimed it anyway, not out of obligation, but out of a love so fierce it terrified me. Outside our walls, Victor Hahn's patience snapped. It happened on a rainy October night, the kind where the city lights blurred into streaks against black skies. I had left the penthouse for a late meeting in Koreatown, neutral ground to discuss boundaries with a minor faction leader who feared Victor's growing aggression. Aisha had begged me not to go. "It feels wrong tonight," she said softly, voice timid but laced with genuine unease. "Please stay." I kissed her forehead. Our touches had grown bolder, lingering, and promised I would return within 2 hours. Tay stayed behind with a full security detail. The penthouse was a fortress. Biometric locks, bulletproof glass, guards on every entrance. Yet Victor found a way. I was midway through the meeting when my phone vibrated with the emergency code. Tay's voice, tight with controlled panic. "Intrusion. Multiple armed men. We're holding, but get back now." The world tilted. Terror, pure animal, clawed through me. Aisha, the baby. I left the meeting without a word, tires screeching as we raced uptown, rain hammering the windshield. The penthouse was chaos when I arrived. The private elevator opened to the smell of smoke and gunpowder. Windows shattered, furniture overturned. 2 guards down in the foyer, wounds serious but stable. Mrs. Park huddled in the kitchen, pale but unharmed. Tay met me at the stairs, blood on his sleeve. They came through the service entrance, bribed a new maintenance worker. 10 men, maybe more. We repelled most, a few got inside. And Aisha, my voice did not sound like my own. Upstairs, she fought, boss, saved one of ours. The words barely registered. I took the stairs 3 at a time, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The master suite hallway was a battlefield, bullet holes in the walls, spent casings glittering on the marble. One intruder lay motionless near the door, restrained by zip ties. Another guard clutched his side, face ashen. Then I saw her. Aisha stood in the bedroom doorway, barefoot in one of my white dress shirts, now streaked with blood. Not hers, thank God. Her hands shook violently, clutching a small sculpture she had apparently used as a weapon. Her face was pale, eyes wide with shock and lingering adrenaline. When she saw me, her knees buckled. I caught her before she fell, pulling her against me so tightly I felt her frantic heartbeat. "You're safe," I kept repeating, voice breaking. "You're safe, you're safe." She clung to me, face buried in my chest, body racked with silent sobs. The blood on her shirt was from the guard she had dragged to safety, using her trauma skills under fire to apply pressure to a gunshot wound while Tay held off attackers. She had used the self-defense moves he taught her to disarm one intruder, striking pressure points with desperate precision. My magnificent, fierce wife. I carried her to the sitting room, away from the wreckage. Mrs. Park brought blankets and tea, fussing with tears in her eyes. The doctor arrived quickly, confirming no injuries to Aisha or the baby, just elevated stress and minor bruises. When we were alone, I held her on the sofa, rocking gently as the adrenaline crash hit her fully. Shock gave way to dizziness. She swayed even sitting, emotional numbness descending. "I thought they would kill me," she whispered against my neck. I thought. The baby. The words tore me open. Violent inner turmoil exploded. Rage at Victor, terror at how close I had come to losing them, remorse that my world had finally bled into hers. I wasn't here, I rasped. I promised to protect you, and I wasn't here. She pulled back slightly, eyes searching mine through tears. But you gave me the tools to protect myself, the training, the language. I used it. I fought back. Pride and agony collided. You were incredible. She shook her head. I was terrified. But when that guard went down, I couldn't let him die. Not after everything you've given us. Us. The baby and her. The word wrapped around my heart like a lifeline. I cupped her face. You saved a life tonight. Again. Just like you saved mine. Her tears fell faster. The emotional rupture was total. Relief, fear, gratitude, love all crashing together. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead to mine. I was so scared you wouldn't come back, she admitted, voice small and broken. I will always come back, I said fiercely. Always. The moment stretched, charged with everything we had not yet said. Then she kissed me. Not tentative, not frightened. Desperate, grateful, alive. Her hands tangled in my hair, body pressing close despite the lingering tremor. I kissed her back with all the fear and love I had carried that night, tender, reverent, claiming. We moved to the bedroom, our bedroom now, the one I had slept alone in for weeks. The chaos outside faded. There was only her, the woman who had risen from starvation and despair to fight for her new life, for our child, for me.
I undressed her slowly, reverently,
kissing every bruise, every inch of skin that had known cold and hunger and now knew only warmth. She touched the scars on my chest from the night she saved me, tears falling as she traced them. I was so afraid tonight, she whispered, afraid of losing this, losing you. You will never lose me. When we came together, it was slow, intense, overwhelming, every touch a promise, every sigh a confession. She cried out, not from pain, but from the depth of feeling, from finally letting go of the walls built in poverty and fear. I whispered her name like a prayer, in English and Korean, telling her without words that she was my salvation. Afterward, I held her against my chest, hands splayed protectively over her stomach. She fell asleep quickly, exhaustion claiming her at last. I did not sleep. I listened to her breathing, felt the faint weight of the life growing inside her, and let the turmoil rage. Victor would pay. But more than vengeance, I felt purpose. This woman, this fierce, compassionate miracle, had chosen me tonight in the aftermath of violence. She had fought for our future, and I would spend every remaining day proving I was worthy of it, even if it meant dismantling the empire that had nearly destroyed us both. The attack on the penthouse had shattered the fragile peace we had begun to build. For days afterward, the air inside our home felt thick with aftermath, bullet holes patched but still visible in the walls like scars, security doubled, quiet conversations with Tay and the guards in low voices. Aisha moved through the space with a new wariness, one hand often resting protectively on her stomach, even though the pregnancy was still barely visible. She slept better now, curled against me in the master bed we had finally shared, but the nightmares came anyway, soft whimpers in the dark, her body jerking awake as though gunfire still echoed in her ears. I held her through them, whispering reassurances in Korean and English until she settled. Each time, the remorse inside me deepened into something unbearable. I had promised to protect her, yet my world had bled into hers, nearly costing her and our child everything. The passionate love that had anchored me since the night she saved me now burned with guilt as well. Guilt that I had brought this danger to her doorstep, guilt that I had ever dared to claim her as mine. Victor Han had gone too far. The raid had been bold, brazen, a direct challenge. My men had captured 3 of the attackers alive. I interrogated them myself in the basement of a discreet warehouse in Long Island City. Cold concrete, dim lights, the smell of rust and fear. They talked quickly. Victor had ordered the hit, wanting to send a message. Don Kang's new wife was his weakness. Hurt her, and you hurt him. I did not kill them. Killing invited retaliation, and I could not risk more blood on Aisha's conscience. Instead, I sent them back to Victor with broken fingers and a message of my own. Touch my family again, and there will be no survivors. The city watched. Tensions rose. Rivals who had once stayed neutral now picked sides. And in the middle of it all, Aisha and I clung to each other like lifelines. One evening, after a long day of meetings and security briefings, I found her in the library, curled in the armchair by the fireplace. She wore one of my cashmere sweaters again, sleeves rolled up, the hem falling to her thighs. Her hair was loose, face pale from exhaustion and the lingering effects of the attack. When I entered, she looked up, eyes soft with worry. "You're home late," she said quietly, voice restrained but warm. I crossed to her, kneeling as I always did when I needed to be closer. "I'm sorry. There are things I must handle." She reached out, fingers brushing my cheek. "You came back. That's what matters." The simple words undid me. I took her hand, pressing it to my lips. "I will always come back." She studied me for a long moment, then stood, pulling me up with her. "Come with me." She led me to the master bedroom. The lights were low, only the bedside lamps glowing. She closed the door softly behind us, then turned to face me. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the buttons of my shirt. "Aisha," my voice was rough. "You don't have to." "I want to," she whispered. "Tonight, please." Shock hit me first, violent, disorienting, then joy, fierce and overwhelming. I let her undo the buttons, let her push the shirt from my shoulders. Her fingers traced the scars on my chest, lingering over the ones she had stitched herself that first night. "I was so afraid of you once," she said softly. "Afraid of what you represented. Power, control, everything I never had." Her voice cracked, tears welled. "But tonight, when those men came, when I fought, I realized something. You gave me strength. You gave me a reason to fight. And I don't want to be afraid anymore." Emotional rupture consumed me. Remorse that I had ever made her fear me. Love so intense, it was pain. I cupped her face, thumbs brushing away her tears. "I never wanted your fear," I said, voice breaking. "Only your heart." She rose on her toes and kissed me, slow, deliberate, no hesitation. It was different from the desperate kiss after the attack. This was choice. This was surrender. This was love. We moved to the bed together. I undressed her slowly, reverently, kissing every inch of skin that had once known hunger and cold. She trembled beneath my touch, not from fear, but from feeling too much at once. When I entered her, it was gentle, careful, mindful of the life we had created. She gasped, clinging to me, tears slipping down her cheeks even as she smiled. "I love you," she whispered against my ear. "I love you, Daniel." The words shattered me. Violent inner turmoil exploded. Joy, guilt, redemption, love, all crashing together until I could barely breathe. I buried my face in her neck, holding her as though she might vanish. "I have loved you since the night you saved me," I rasped. "Every moment since, every breath." We moved together, slow and deep, the world narrowing to the rhythm of our bodies, the sound of her soft sighs, the way she said my name like a prayer. When release came, it was overwhelming. Waves of sensation, emotion, connection. She cried out my name, clinging to me as though I were her anchor in the storm. Afterward, we lay tangled in the sheets, her head on my chest, my hands splayed over her stomach. The silence was peaceful, sacred. "I was so scared to feel this," she admitted quietly. "To want this. I kept thinking, I was bought. I was property. How could I love the man who took my choice?" The words were a knife. Remorse surged anew, hot and tearing. I will spend my life making it right, I said. Every day I will earn your choice. She lifted her head, eyes searching mine. You already have. You didn't force me tonight, I chose, and I choose you. Tears burned behind my eyes, tears I had not shed since childhood. I kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. I will protect you, I vowed. Both of you, always. The night deepened. We talked in whispers about the baby, about names. She liked Sophia for a girl, Minjae for a boy, about dreams we had buried. She spoke of her mother, lost too young to illness because medical bills had bankrupted them. I spoke of my first wife, of the son I had lost to my own choices. The contrast was heartbreaking. She, who had known only deprivation, now lay in silk sheets, loved by a man who could buy cities. Yet the love felt real, earned, fragile but growing. Outside, the city slept. Inside, we held each other, two broken people finding wholeness in the ruins of what had once been coercion. But the danger was not gone. The next morning, another confrontation erupted. Victor's men ambushed a convoy carrying medical supplies I had ordered for Aisha, special prenatal vitamins, equipment for home monitoring. They blocked the street in Flushing, demanding the truck as payment for the failed raid. I went personally. When I arrived, the drivers were surrounded, hands raised. Victor's lieutenant stepped forward, smirking. Tell Don Kang his little wife's gifts are ours now. Rage blinded me. I stepped out of the SUV, Tay at my side. You dare threaten my family, I said, voice low, lethal. The lieutenant faltered. We're just... I closed the distance, grabbing him by the collar. You will return every box. You will tell Victor that the next time he touches anything belonging to me, I will burn his entire operation to the ground. No weapons were drawn, no blood spilled, but the message was clear. They backed down, retreating into the rain. When I returned home, Aisha was waiting. She had heard the news from Tay. She ran to me, throwing her arms around my neck. You're safe, she breathed. Thank God. I held her tightly. I told you, I will always come back. She pulled back, eyes shining with tears and something fiercer, love, trust, partnership. I believe you, she said softly. In that moment, with the city roaring outside and our child growing inside her, I felt the first real hope that we might survive this, my world, her past, the chaos we had been forced into. Because Aisha Kang was no longer my captive. She was my heart, and I would fight every battle, bear every scar to keep her safe. The paternity test results arrived on a gray October morning, delivered by the private lab in a sealed envelope that felt heavier than any weapon I had ever held. I sat in my study, staring at the paper for a long time before opening it. Aisha was still asleep upstairs, exhausted from another night of nausea and restless dreams. I had insisted on the test, not because I doubted her, but because I needed the world to know the truth I already carried in my heart. This child was mine, blood or not. The envelope confirmed what we both knew. The probability of paternity, 0%. I closed my eyes, letting the violent inner turmoil wash over me. Jealousy flickered briefly, a ghost of the man I used to be, but it drowned quickly beneath the tide of love and resolve. This child, growing beneath Aisha's heart, was the future I had never dared dream of. Biology meant nothing against the fierce, burning attachment I felt for both of them. When Aisha woke, I went to her. She was in the kitchen, sipping ginger tea Mrs. Park had prepared, face pale but eyes brighter than they had been in weeks. She looked up as I entered, sensing the weight in my silence. The results? She asked softly, voice timid, braced for pain. I handed her the envelope. She opened it with trembling fingers, scanning the page. Tears welled instantly, relief, guilt, fear all colliding. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know you wanted... I knelt before her, taking her hands. I want you. I want this child. That has not changed. It never will. Shock rippled across her face, followed by deep confusion and dizziness. She swayed slightly, gripping the counter. But your allies, your world, they expect an heir of your blood. They will accept what I accept, I said firmly, or they will answer to me. The decision crystallized in that moment. I would declare the child my heir publicly, unprecedented, defiant, a message to every rival that my family was untouchable, blood tie or not. The announcement came 2 days later at a private gathering of my inner circle, lieutenants, captains, trusted business partners, in the penthouse dining room. Tay stood at my side. Aisha sat beside me, hand resting on the subtle curve of her stomach, face composed but pale. I stood, glass in hand.
"My wife is expecting our child," I said, voice carrying through the room. "This child is my heir. My blood runs through this family, not by birth alone, but by choice. Anyone who questions that questions me." Silence. Then murmurs. Some nodded acceptance. Others exchanged uneasy glances, traditionalists who valued bloodlines above all. But no one spoke against it. My authority held. Victor Hahn's reaction came swiftly. A message delivered through back channels. "Claiming another man's bastard as heir? You've gone soft, Kang. The streets will eat you alive." The threat was clear. Victor saw weakness and pounced. The assassination attempt happened at the annual Koreatown Autumn Festival, a public event I had attended for years to show face, distribute scholarships, maintain community ties. This year, I brought Aisha. She had hesitated, still shaken from the penthouse raid, but I insisted gently. "I want them to see you," I said. "To know you are my wife, my partner, protected." She agreed, dressing in a simple hanbok-inspired coat over warm layers, hand often drifting to her stomach. We walked the crowded streets together, food stalls steaming with tteokbokki and hatyak, children running with lanterns, music pulsing from stages. Guards blended into the crowd, but I felt their eyes everywhere. Aisha smiled tentatively at the sights, curiosity overtaking caution. "It's beautiful," she said softly, "like another world." I squeezed her hand. "It's your world now too." We paused at a scholarship booth where I handed envelopes to deserving students, many from families like hers once was, scraping by in cramped apartments. Aisha watched, eyes shining with quiet pride. Then the shot rang out. A single crack, sharp over the festival noise. The bullet was meant for Aisha, aimed at her chest as she turned to smile at a child holding a lantern. I saw the glint from the rooftop across the street. Instinct took over. I threw myself in front of her, twisting to shield her body with mine. Pain exploded in my shoulder, then chest, hot, blinding. I hit the ground hard, Aisha's scream piercing the air. Chaos erupted, crowds scattering, my guards rushing the rooftop, Tay shouting orders. Aisha dropped to her knees beside me, hands pressing the wounds, face drained of color. Shock, terror, disorientation hit her in waves. She swayed, dizziness threatening blackout, but her training held. "Stay with me, Daniel," she commanded, voice breaking but steady. "Pressure here. Someone get the med kit." Blood soaked my coat, the world blurred. But I saw her, my fierce wife, hands stained red again, fighting for my life just as she had the first night we met. Guards formed a perimeter. The shooter was captured alive, Victor's man, already talking under pressure. I faded in and out, Aisha's face above me, tears falling onto my cheek. "I love you," she whispered fiercely. "Don't you dare leave me. Don't you dare leave us." The ambulance arrived quickly. My influence ensured priority, but Aisha refused to leave my side, riding with me, holding my hand as monitors beeped. In the hospital, private suite, best surgeons money could buy, she paced until they wheeled me out of surgery. 2 bullets removed, no vital organs hit. I would live. When I woke, she was there, asleep in the chair beside the bed, hand still clutching mine. Exhaustion had claimed her at last. I watched her, heart fracturing and healing at once. She had nearly died because of me, because I had dared to claim happiness in a world built on shadows. Remorse crashed over me, violent, tearing. I had taken a bullet meant for her, yet it was my choices that had painted the target. Tay entered quietly later, reporting Victor's operation was crumbling, allies abandoning him after the public attack. The captured shooter had named him directly, but victory felt hollow.
When Aisha woke, she leaned over me, tears fresh.
"You saved me," she whispered. "Again."
"We save each other," I rasped. She kissed my forehead, then my lips, soft, reverent.
"I was so scared," she admitted. "Seeing you bleed, it was like losing everything I never thought I'd have."
I pulled her close as much as the wounds allowed. "You have me, always." In the quiet hospital room, with machines beeping softly and the city lights visible through the window, we held each other. The passionate union we had found amid chaos now deepened into something unbreakable. I had taken a bullet for her. She had fought through terror to keep me alive. And in that shared brush with death, the last walls between us crumbled. The child she carried, our child, would know only love, even if I had to tear down my empire to ensure it. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and fear. Monitors beeped in steady rhythm, a reminder that I was still alive, barely. Pain radiated from my chest and shoulder, dull under heavy medication, but nothing compared to the terror that had gripped me when the bullet meant for Aisha struck me instead. I had thrown myself in front of her without thought, body moving before mind, driven by the fierce, burning love that had become the core of my existence. Aisha sat beside the bed, face drawn with exhaustion, eyes red from tears she had shed while I was in surgery. She had not left my side since the festival shooting. Her hand clutched mine as though letting go might allow death to claim me after all. The pregnancy had advanced enough now that the subtle curve of her stomach pressed against the bed rail when she leaned forward. Seeing her like this, pale, frightened, yet resolute, tore at me. She, who had known only deprivation and struggle, now carried the weight of my world's violence on her shoulders. The door opened quietly. Tay entered, expression grim. "The surgeons say you'll recover fully. No permanent damage." I nodded weakly. "Victor?" "His network is collapsing. Allies pulling away after the public attack. The shooter confessed everything. Federal attention is increasing." Federal. The word hung heavy. My estranged son, David, now a prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office, would hear of this soon, if he had not already. Aisha squeezed my hand. "Rest," she said softly, voice restrained but laced with command. "We'll handle the rest later." But rest was impossible. Remorse crashed over me in waves. I had taken bullets meant for her. Yet it was my empire that had drawn the fire. The child she carried, our child, biology be damned, had nearly lost both parents because of the shadows I could not escape. That night, complications arose. Pain sharpened suddenly in my chest. Monitors alarmed. Blood pressure dropped. Internal bleeding. The surgeons had missed a small vessel nicked by bullet fragments. Aisha was there instantly, calling codes, hands steady despite the terror in her eyes. "He's crashing! Get the team!" The hospital was compromised. Victor's remaining loyalists had eyes everywhere, bribed orderlies, hacked systems. Moving me to surgery risked exposure. Aisha made the decision in the chaos. "We can't wait," she said to Tay, voice firm. "There's a hidden surgical suite in the penthouse. Daniel had it built years ago for emergencies like this. We move him now." Tay hesitated only a second. "It's risky." "So is dying here." They transferred me by private ambulance, guards clearing paths. Aisha rode with me, monitoring vitals, her hands never leaving my chest. Back in the penthouse, under bright surgical lights in the concealed lower-level suite, Aisha took charge. She had assembled a trusted team, doctors I kept on retainer, sworn to secrecy. But when the lead surgeon faltered, overwhelmed by my deteriorating condition, Aisha scrubbed in herself. I drifted in and out of consciousness, pain and drugs blurring the world. But I heard her voice, calm, commanding, the voice that had saved me once before. "Clamp here, suction, I need better light." Her hands, those slender hands that had known only exhaustion and hunger in her old life, now held my life again. She found the bleeder, repaired the vessel, stitched with precision born of trauma bays and sheer will. At one point, my heart faltered, monitors flatlined. "No," she said fiercely. "No, Daniel, come back." She shocked me herself, hands pressing paddles to my chest. Once, twice. The rhythm returned. I woke hours later in recovery. Aisha slumped in a chair beside the bed, scrubs still on, face streaked with dried tears and sweat. When my eyes opened, she startled awake, leaning over me. "You're back," she whispered, voice breaking. "You came back." I managed a weak smile. "Told you, always." Tears spilled down her cheeks. She pressed her forehead to mine, body shaking with sobs of relief. "I thought I lost you," she said. I can't do this without you." The emotional reckoning hit us both then, violent, tearing, complete. She had operated on me, hands shaking inside gloves, terrified of failing the man she loved. From the woman who had once starved in a freezing apartment, skipping meals to pay rent, to this, saving a powerful man's life in a hidden $1 million surgical suite. The contrast was absurd, heartbreaking, redemptive. I reached for her hand. "You saved me, again." She laughed through tears. "We're even now." But we were not even. I owed her everything. In the quiet recovery days that followed, delirium brought confessions from me. Fevered, half-conscious, I murmured truths I had buried for years. "I'm sorry," I whispered one night. "For buying you, for the fear, for everything." She hushed me, stroking my hair. "You gave me life, Daniel, a real life." Another night. "I love you more than my empire, more than anything." She cried then, holding me gently. "I know, I love you too." The inner turmoil that had defined me, remorse for the coercion, guilt for the danger, began to ease under her forgiveness. The passionate love we shared now felt earned, mutual, unbreakable. Victor's end came swiftly after. His last desperate move, a drive-by on one of my legitimate businesses, failed spectacularly. Federal agents, tipped anonymously, I suspected David's quiet influence, raided his operations. Victor fled but was captured within days. The streets quieted, my dominance held, but I began the shift I had promised myself, moving assets to legitimate ventures, real estate, tech startups, community investments. Aisha watched the changes with cautious wonder. "You're really doing it," she said one evening, curled against me on the terrace. Stepping back. "For you," I said. "For our child. I want him, or her, to know a father, not a legend built on shadows." She touched her stomach, eyes shining. "You'll be the best father." The words healed something deep inside me. In those quiet moments of tenderness, her head on my shoulder, city lights below, rain soft against the glass, we reflected on the journey. From the night she saved a stranger in an ER, to the cruel bargain, to bullets and blood and unbreakable love. The absurd unfairness of fate, that a woman crushed by poverty would find wholeness with the man who had once bought her, brought tears to us both. But it was our story, and in saving my life twice, Aisha had given me more than survival. She had given me redemption. Recovery was slow, measured in small victories and quiet nights. The wounds in my chest and shoulder healed under Aisha's watchful care. She changed dressings with gentle hands, monitored vitals like the brilliant doctor she was, and scolded me softly when I tried to rise too soon. The penthouse, once a fortress of solitude, now echoed with her footsteps. Mrs. Parks humming in the kitchen, and the soft rustle of baby books Aisha read aloud in the evenings. Her pregnancy progressed beautifully. The curve of her stomach grew more pronounced, and she glowed with a health I had helped restore. No more emaciation from skipped meals. No more dull skin from exhaustion and cold winds. Yet the inner turmoil inside me raged fiercer than ever. Every time I looked at her, love surged, passionate, overwhelming, the anchor that had pulled me from darkness. But remorse followed like a shadow. I had nearly gotten her killed. The child we both cherished had nearly lost a father because of the empire I had built on shadows. The violent tension coiled tighter, guilt for the past, terror for the future, resolve to change warring with the habits of a lifetime. News of the shooting had spread, not just in my world, but beyond. and it reached David. My son, estranged for 15 years, arrived unannounced one afternoon while I was resting on the terrace. Tay escorted him in, expression neutral. David stood in the doorway, tall like me, fair-skinned with the same dark eyes, but hardened by years in courtrooms battling men like his father. He wore a suit, prosecutor's badge clipped to his belt. His face was a mask, but his eyes betrayed pain. "Father," he said quietly. The word hit like a bullet I had not seen coming. Shock rippled through me, followed by deep confusion and dizziness even lying down. I tried to sit up, pain flaring. Aisha was there instantly, helping me, her hand steady on my back. She looked at David with cautious curiosity, sensing the weight. "You're David," she said softly, voice respectful. "I've heard about you." He nodded stiffly, gaze shifting to her stomach, then to me. "I heard about the shooting. I thought I should see if the rumors were true." Rumors that Don Kang had taken bullets for his young wife, that he was stepping back from the life. I gestured weakly to a chair. "Sit." He did, tension thick in the air. Silence stretched. Years of resentment, absence, judgment hung between us. "I came to arrest you once," he said finally, voice low. "Years ago. But I couldn't." The confession cracked something in me. Emotional rupture, pain from the son I had lost to my choices, remorse so violent I gripped the bed rail. "I deserved it," I rasped. "I deserve worse." Aisha squeezed my hand, her presence grounding me. David's eyes flicked to her again. "You're the reason, aren't you? The doctor who saved him the first time." She nodded timidly. "I didn't know who he was then." He studied her, the woman from a world so far from ours, who had risen from heartbreaking poverty to stand beside me. Curiosity softened his hardness. "And the child?" "Mine," I said firmly, "in every way." David leaned forward. "You publicly claimed a child not of your blood, after taking bullets for her. The man I knew wouldn't have done that. The man you knew was empty," I said. "Until her." Tears glistened in his eyes, shock, grief, perhaps hope. He stood abruptly, pacing. "I cut you out because I hated what you did. The lives ruined, the blood. But seeing you like this, nearly dead for someone." His voice broke. Aisha spoke then, soft but steady. "He's changing. For us. For the baby. He's moving everything legitimate." David stopped, looking at her. "And you? You forgive him for how this started?" She hesitated, hand on her stomach. Tears welled. "It started wrong. Coerced. But he gave me choice back. Every day he earns it." The honesty hung heavy. David's face crumpled. Then Aisha added quietly, "There's something you should know. Years ago, when you were shot in that drive-by, the case that made your career, I was the resident who treated you anonymously. I pulled strings to get you the best care. I didn't know you were his son then, but I couldn't let you die." Shock hit David like a wave. Disorientation made him sway, gripping the chair. "You saved me?" She nodded. "Fate, maybe, or something bigger." Emotional numbness gave way to rupture. David sank into the chair, head in hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I watched, heart fracturing. The son I had lost, reconciled through the woman I loved, the woman who had bridged worlds with compassion. David looked up, eyes red. "I don't know how to do this. Forgive. Come back." "Then don't forgive yet," I said, voice thick. "Just be here. Meet your sibling. Let us try." He nodded slowly. "I'll help. With the transition. Federal pressure on the old networks. Clean exits." Hope flickered, fragile but real. In the weeks that followed, David visited more. Tense at first, conversations careful. He brought case files, quietly guiding me on legitimate paths. Aisha cooked with Mrs. Park, sharing stories of her old life, the humiliating food stamps,
the nights without heat, the brother who had nearly destroyed her. David listened, horror softening into understanding. One evening, as rain fell again, David and I stood on the terrace alone. "I was ashamed of you," he admitted, "but you took bullets for her. You're claiming her child. That's more than I expected." "I was ashamed of myself," I said, "until she showed me I could be better." He extended his hand. I took it. Then he pulled me into a hug, awkward, long overdue. Tears fell then, for both of us. Aisha watched from the doorway, hand on her stomach, smiling through tears. Reconciliation was not instant. Wounds from years apart lingered. But it began. The family healing spread. Marcus, reformed and sober, visited under supervision. Aisha forgave cautiously, setting boundaries. He wept at the sight of her pregnancy, promising change. In quiet moments, Aisha and I reflected.
"You gave me a family," she said one night, curled against me, "from nothing." "You gave me redemption," I replied. The contrast remained poignant. She, who had known only survival, now surrounded by love and security. I, who had everything material, now rich in what mattered. The inner turmoil eased, replaced by purpose. Victor's remnants scattered, my legitimate empire grew. And with David's hand in mine, Aisha's head on my shoulder, I felt whole, for the first time. 1 year had passed since the festival shooting, and the changes in our lives felt like a miracle I still struggled to believe I deserved. The penthouse, once a cold fortress of marble and glass overlooking Manhattan, now hummed with life. Baby Sophia, our daughter, with Aisha's beautiful dark eyes and a smile that lit every shadowed corner of my heart, toddled across the heated floors, chasing after the colorful toys scattered like treasures. Aisha watched her from the sofa, glowing with motherhood, her body strong and healthy after months of proper care and rest. No more emaciation from hunger, no more sleepless nights shivering in the cold. She had blossomed, and I had watched it happen with a love so fierce it still took my breath away. I stood on the terrace of our new Malibu beach house, the one I had deeded solely to her name as insurance, as freedom if my past ever caught up. The ocean stretched endless before us, waves crashing softly under a California sunset. David sat nearby, playing with Sophia, his laughter genuine for the first time in years. Marcus visited occasionally now, reformed and steady, earning his place as uncle. Mrs. Park bustled inside, preparing a simple barbecue, burgers, corn on the cob, fresh salads, an American tradition she had embraced with joy. We had renewed our vows here, on this beach 6 months ago. A small ceremony, just family and close friends. Aisha walked toward me in a flowing white dress, barefoot in the sand, eyes shining with choice. Not coercion, but love freely given. When she reached me, she whispered, "We claimed each other." And she meant it. I wrapped my arms around her from behind now, chin resting on her shoulder as we watched Sophia chase waves with David. My hands splayed over her stomach, flat again, but we talked of more children, perhaps adoption to give homes to those who had known the hardships she once endured. "Do you regret any of it?" I asked quietly, the old turmoil stirring. Remorse still visited in quiet moments, guilt for the forced beginning, for the danger I had brought. She turned in my arms, eyes searching mine. "I regret the pain, the fear, the nights I went hungry, wondering if tomorrow would be worse. But I don't regret us. You saw me when I was invisible. You lifted me when I was broken." Tears pricked my eyes. The contrast, her past of heartbreaking poverty against this life of security and love, never failed to humble me. "You saved me more," I said, voice rough. "From loneliness, from the man I was becoming." She smiled, soft and radiant. "We saved each other." Sophia ran to us then, arms outstretched. I lifted her high, her giggles filling the air. David joined, placing a hand on my shoulder, a gesture of family healed. In this moment, under the fading sun, I felt the inner conflict quiet at last. The passionate love that had ignited the night she saved me in that ER had grown into something deeper, compassion, partnership, humanity that transcended everything. Love transcends skin color and social class. Wealth and poverty cannot prevent true connection. Aisha, who had known only survival, now thrived. I, who had everything material, had found true richness in her and our chosen family. Knowledge of hardship teaches empathy. Life lesson: compassion bridges divides. Education in forgiveness heals old wounds. Knowledge shared builds stronger bonds. Life lesson: choice turns coercion into commitment. Education through love reveals our shared humanity. Knowledge that pain shapes us, but love reshapes us better. Life lesson: redemption is possible for anyone willing. Education in patience earns trust. Knowledge of our differences strengthens unity. As the stars emerged, I held them close, my wife, my daughter, my son, and knew peace. If this story touched your heart, showed that love can bloom even from difficult beginnings, please subscribe to Crimson Romance Stories, like this video, and share it with someone who needs hope today. We bring new tales every day. Tell me in the comments, how did this story make you feel? Does it connect to real life for you, the way love overcomes barriers? Share your thoughts, your emotions. I read every one. Wishing you all good health, a joyful life, and daily peace. Goodbye for now. See you in the next video.